In this video, I'm going to get this sedan delivery driving. In the last video, I got the big block Chevy in it to run, and now I'm going to put the four-wheel drive axles in it and see if I can get it to drive. It has a 454 big block Chevy with a SM465 4-speed transmission and an MP205 transfer case. It's got a bunch of questionable custom suspension and body mounts, so I probably won't ever drive this thing on the road the way it is. I have a Dana 60 and a 14 bolt out of a 1-ton Chevy truck to go in it. It should bolt right in. This car is sitting on a half-ton Chevy truck frame, and the rear leaf springs have been moved back about 6 inches. The first thing I'm going to do is get this Dana 60 ready to go in. I got to pull the old leaf springs off, the old brake lines, and some other stuff. And then I'm going to unbolt the front axle and get this thing rolled into place. I'm bolting in the rear axle. This plate goes on top of the spring to hold the bolt in place. I put a spacer under the spring to help level out the car a little bit. It sits a little bit low in the back. I'm using the U-bolts that came with this car for the rear axle. They're a little bit smaller than they should be, and one of them was cut, so I'm just going to weld it back together. It's not ideal, but it's going to work for now. Next, I'm going to work on the steering and the front axle bolts. I ordered some parts from Off-Road Design. I got this block that raises the steering arm. I got this drop drag link that helps with the ball joint angles. And I got this dropped pitman arm. I also got longer brake lines and a front axle bolt kit for the Dana 60. So I'm going to start getting this put together. A crossover steering setup would be better, but it costs more money, and this is going to be fine for this car. Alright, so I'm working on the brakes. I took the master cylinder off and I took the booster off. because they were stuck and not working. And I thought I might have to replace them, but I was able to get them working. They just had a little bit of rust and they were kind of stuck, and I was able to free them up and get it all working. So I don't think I'm gonna have to replace it all. This thing has Hydro Boost brakes, so it's operated off of the pressure from the power steering pump, and it's supposed to be more reliable because you're not relying on the engine vacuum, and it's supposed to have more pressure for the larger 1-ton brakes. Well, it started to rain, so I'm working under the car. I'm putting in the brake lines and getting these rusty old lines disconnected. You got to be really careful with these to not break them off. I'm just going slow and moving the brake line back and forth to get it to kind of break loose from the fitting so that it doesn't twist off. I've already connected the front brake lines, so when I finish with this one, I'll be ready to bleed the brakes. I'm getting ready to do some welding. I need to weld up the steering shaft, and I need to fix the U-bolt for the rear axle, and I need to put together a rear drive shaft. I'm going to cut this U-bolt and use this piece of rod to extend it so that it's the same length as all the other bolts. This definitely isn't the right way to do this, but it's the cheapest and fastest way to do it. The drive shaft that was with this car was too short, and it had the wrong size U-joint for the 14 bolt. So I'm going to take these two old drive shafts and make them into one drive shaft that will work for this car. There's a gap between these two pieces of drive shaft, so I wrap tape around the inside one to hold it centered while I weld it. Here are the welds. They're not perfect, but I think I got good penetration. I'm kind of rushing through this. Here's the welded bolt. Hopefully that holds up. I'm going to get these parts installed and then start on the clutch linkage. Okay, the clutch pedal is all the way out and the shift fork is all the way back, and this linkage is not long enough to fully disengage the clutch. So I think I'm going to have to pull it all apart and modify it. This is the Z bracket out of the car. Someone added this extra piece on the upper arm to lengthen it. So this arm is really long. It hits a bunch of stuff. And because it's so long, when you push the clutch in, it doesn't move the lower arm enough. So I'm going to shorten this upper arm and I'm going to lengthen the lower arm, and I'm also going to pivot the lower arm down a little bit so it has better alignment with the clutch fork. And then I'm also going to re-drill the holes in the mounting bracket so that I can move it towards the engine a little bit, because the upper arm hits the fender well, which limits its rotation. Got the clutch all back together and working, and the next thing on my list is the exhaust. This thing is big and ugly, and I want the sound to match the look. Right now it's so quiet. So I'm going to take the Sawzall and I'm going to cut the mufflers off. Well, it's raining again, but if I stopped every time it rained or got too hot, I would never get anything done. I still have a couple of things to do on this car. I need to change the engine oil, it needs a water pump, and a few other little things, but it pretty much is running and driving. So I'm going to get the big tires bolted on this, and in the next video, I'm going to take this thing for a drive and test it out. I'm going to drive on some rocks, maybe some mud, and whatever else I can find. It's hailing, and there's a rainbow in the background. Alright, the tires are on. It looks pretty cool. It's really tall. I'm still not sure if I'm going to keep it this way or put it back on a stock frame. We'll see. Who knows what's going to happen in the future. Subscribe if you want to see more content. I have a lot more projects planned. Thanks for watching.